pre-pandemic, we were averaging in the U.S., in the U.S. alone, a negative 15% unemployment rate in security. Wow. Negative 15%. So we were already shorthanded. The need for more expansive growth in the training for security personnel was already needed. And then the pandemic hit. So it was like a storm hitting a storm that already existed.
So the future of capital markets as a discussion, we've continued this webinar series. So I'm going to give you a little background information that is going to be helpful to, what we talked about, our core purposes, to better understanding the structure of things, how money's flowing through our economy. And then really, that's going to be very brief today. I'm going to turn it over to Tellis, and he and I are going to have a bit of a dialogue on what we're doing. And we are building a state-of-the-art stock exchange that has really never existed in the United States. Between our technology team, we recently added Bruce Trask, who was one of the senior architects of the NASDAQ. We have Tellis with an ever vigilant eye on how we're constructing things in terms of our security, and we're going to go into greater detail on that today. So without further ado, this is what we're going to talk about today. So first off, you got a little information on what the Dream Exchange is. We will be both a national market exchange. What that means is a direct competitor of the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. We intend to allow the traffic for every listed security in the capital markets on our main exchange. And I'm going to briefly touch on something that no one really does know about. It's brand new to the market, called a venture exchange. And then I'm going to introduce Tellis. And I'm going to let Tellis go through some slides that are really important to me personally and to the exchange and to you who may be a participant. So, and then at the end, I'll go through some ways that you can participate in the launch of what we're accomplishing. So, first off, what we're doing is we're entering, carrying the traffic of this capital market that exists today. Capital markets today are very concentrated on the largest investors who really are making the investment decisions for many, many, many millions, if not trillions of dollars of investment funds. I'm always fascinated to hear the numbers. They're mind-boggling that, literally trillions of securities, that means individual stocks, trillions of them trade every year with capital values in the hundreds of trillions of dollars through the United States capital system. At one time, however, there were more than 10,000 companies in the public market. What that meant was you had a choice. You had a menu of securities that you could invest in that included as many as 10,000 companies. And when we say, those companies that you could directly invest in, well, you didn't have to know someone. It wasn't a private company. It wasn't your neighbor. It wasn't a startup. It wasn't friends and family. It was a listed stock on a stock exchange that if you decided that company had a bright future, you could buy some of those securities and increase your wealth. In addition, however, you as an entrepreneur, if that's part of the audience, you had an option. You had the ability to go into the market and seek money from a public market. And that is an increasingly smaller market, although the value is tremendously increased. So today, since 1996, we have 4,400 fewer companies that are available for you to choose to invest in the public markets. And it's been shrinking, and it continues to shrink. And the total market value, however, is $36 trillion. That means when you add up the value of JP Morgan and Apple Computer and Microsoft and Coca-Cola, the value of those companies today exceeds $36 trillion. And 80% of all that value is really guided through the marketplace by what are called institutional investors. Not you and I, the investing public, not what they call the retail investor. Although we do have tremendous influence. We do buy and sell, and that part of the market is important. And if to no one else, it's important to us. It's important to us for a number of reasons, and one of the primary reasons is that we are going to be the first minority controlled and owned stock exchange in the history of America. So how would we, with our core goals of helping entrepreneurs and specifically targeting what we've referred to as the underserved market? It's a nice way of saying there are communities that really don't have very many public companies, if any. So the Black community has only had one company listed on the New York Stock Exchange and a handful of others that were owned by Black ownership that were ever in the public markets, that ever sought the opportunity or were given the opportunity to become part of this multi-trillion-dollar system. So we intend to work towards affecting a positive change by what we're creating. So, having said that, however, there's the small end of the market, a very small end of the market. And it was this, what we call the $50 million and under IPO. That seems to be the benchmark for where we should be targeting the help. So there's been a decline of the small initial public offering. And to do that to change that has required kind of an intensive process that we've been engaged in now for many years, very successfully. There's a piece of legislation called the Main Street Growth Act. It will shortly be reintroduced into Congress, and it creates the opportunity to open something called a venture stock exchange. And it's our intention to be the very first one. And as part of the larger exchange construction, we are building in already the parameters under which the new venture exchange would work. And this is specifically targeted at these smaller IPOs, the smaller initial public offering. And like I said, I never know the audience that I'm dealing with. So if I'm using terminology that is confusing or is undefined, or if you're very sophisticated and I'm boring you, I apologize in advance, but I'm trying to speak to the entire crowd. And, initial public offering, initial means the first time. It's the first time that something occurred. Public means that we're dealing with the general American investing public, not just a group of private individuals. So an initial public offering is the first time that a company is allowed to sell its shares of stock to the general American investing public. And since 1997, or actually since 1987, the trend, and this is our research, which is we have a very telling research paper published in Oxford University's Handbook on IPOs. It's probably the leading publication on initial public offerings, comprehensive publication that's ever been written. So if you look at chapter 9, myself and our director of research, Professor Floros, are the authors of how this particular market that you're seeing in this slide works. And knowing how it works, we're intending to restore it. Because if you look at the graph, the white bars on the bar graph show that the overwhelming majority of initial public offerings, we have a small portion of this data, but it goes back 50 years. Most of the people who availed themselves, who went to the public markets, were very small companies, $50 million and under. In fact, many years it was as much as 90% of all the public offerings. So if we remove that, which you see the white part of the graph shrinks for the last 20 years, if we remove that feature from the public markets, well, fewer entrepreneurs have access to the entire public marketplace. And they're really obligated to go to relationship-driven capital markets, venture capital, private equity, friends and family. And if you don't have those relationships, if you don't have friends and family that can contribute millions of dollars to your small company, it makes it very difficult. And if you look at our YouTube channel, and we have really a very, very vast number of webinars that go into this at length. So what we're doing in constructing these two exchanges and constructing the technology, because we want to take advantage of the change in financial service technology to make this more available to the average investor, as well as to open up the market for entrepreneurs. So these purposes, which you saw in the part of the video, are really creating a stock exchange that's fully inclusive, that will compete with the other exchanges that are in the market, as well as designing a brand new type of exchange to address the problem that you see in this particular slide. So just for clarity, this is a little bit more detail on what our core purposes are and what we're doing and what we're designing and how we're constructing things. So in addition, I mean, what's really important to me as the leader and founder of this group of people is to get talented. I want the best people to concentrate on this, because I think we have a window of opportunity to get it really perfect. And as I mentioned earlier, we hired Bruce Trask, who is the top of the industry in terms of the architecture, electronic architecture of exchanges. Today, I'm for the first time getting Tellis Williams to an audience, because my eye has been on since the outset. How are we making sure that the technology we build is secure? It's obvious, and it's all over the news today, that there's hackers and ransomware and cybersecurity threats that occur on a daily basis in all kinds of industries. And so even before we wrote our first line of code to create our stock exchange, my eye was on this. And I can't tell you how comforting it is to have someone the caliber of Tellis on our team, who is now overseeing, as we build, all of what is necessary to make sure that the exchange itself is fully secure. And so, and I can brag about this, and I use the expression, we're creating the dream team at the Dream Exchange, and Tellis is now part of the dream. But if you wouldn't mind, Tellis, maybe you can share a little of your background so that you introduce yourself without me fumbling over your pedigree and the things you've done. And maybe you can just give a brief introduction to who you are and what you've accomplished, and then we'll let you take it from there.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for first having me and welcome me into the organization. This has been a fantastic journey thus far, and I look forward to all that we'll accomplish. Just to give you a little bit about my background, my name is Tellis Williams. I'm now the Chief Information Security Officer at Dream Exchange. Prior to this, I have about over 25 years. Wow, doesn't seem like it's been that long, but 25 years of experience, varying experience in IT. I've literally done almost every aspect of IT, and have managed those particular teams as well, and then moved over to security in about 2007 as the industry started to now focus on securing these particular IT devices and networks. Since then, it's just been a wild journey as I've been able to achieve the highest certifications, a consummate speaker, well, actually globally now at this point. And I try to use, as a practitioner, definitely want to use the knowledge that I have to share with other executives as well, so that we understand that all these organizations can be as safe as possible. We are only as safe as each other. So, but with that 25 years of experience, my last role was at the AXA Partners as the Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. And then expanded out through other territories, including Panama.
Excellent. So, yeah, and he's being humble. He's actually award-winning, and he is he's the guy. So
it's always better when someone else speaks of your awards and not you, right?
Totally understood. So anyway, welcome, Tellis. I'm just thrilled to be able to have you on the team. And what I want to do is, this next slide, it talks a little bit about information security during the pandemic. And, the fact is that I think it's become more pronounced in some ways. This is just my personal view, because there's been significantly more use of technology to accommodate people working from home, and the systems are now significantly more subject to the potential for threats. So tell us, I mean, if you wanted to talk through the slide and just give us a little overview of how things have changed even in the last, I would say, 2 years.
Listen, you are so correct when you speak of the increase since the pandemic occurred. But prior to the pandemic, we were already getting hit hard as an industry. So pre-pandemic, we were averaging in the U.S., in the U.S. alone, a negative 15% unemployment rate in security. Wow. Negative 15%. So we were already shorthanded. The need for more expansive growth in the training for security personnel was already needed. And then the pandemic hit. So it's like a storm hitting a storm that already existed. Now based on the latest figures, we're at about 2,000% increase in cybersecurity breaches. 25.4% of cyber attacks during COVID are targeting the financial sector. So it is imperative that we not only build a top tier exchange from a technology standpoint, but that we also ensure that we're adding in the layers of security as we're building, as we're developing, so that we're not just developing a secure environment that can meet and pass certainly all of the regulatory requirements and would meet the industry standard, but we want to build a top tier security environment. It is just more efficient for us to do so while we're building, to add in all of those layers of security. So it is important that the security teams and the development teams are working very closely together to ensure that we're doing just that we're building in those layers of security as we go, so that we're getting also our product to market as fast as possible.
Excellent. Yeah, and putting that together, what is a bit of a luxury that we have is we don't have any legacy systems. We don't have things that have been sitting out there for 20 years that, oh boy, we better put some security on that, or take out the duct tape and wrap it up, which is, we're able to start from the beginning. So this is your expression, and I love this expression, layered, all-encompassing security. Maybe you could explain a little bit what we're doing and what that means. What does a layered, all-encompassing security approach mean? So
with the security approach, you obviously want to have all of the technology and layers of security that block someone from intruding. But understanding the industry, understanding where we are, to understand that the bad guys only have to be right one day. You have to be right every day. You should also understand that at some point, someone will break an initial wall. So then by adding in a more layered approach, you may get through a front door, but there are other doors for you to go through. In those doors, we'll also always be reviewing our system, scanning our system, ensuring that if someone does breach an initial wall, that they won't extricate any data out of our systems. So just having that layered approach is necessary from a cybersecurity standpoint. And I say cybersecurity as I separate that from information security. We won't just concentrate on cybersecurity. It'll be very important. We'll add in all of the layers that are necessary, and even additional layers so that we have a very mature security environment. However, we won't stop there. We'll also deal with information security. I use this as an example when I'm speaking. If I spend $2 million on a full egress, biometric access system, so that the employees, before they come in, they're scanned using biometric tools, and great. However, if we don't instruct the employees not to leave the door open for other people to walk in behind them, it served us no purpose. So when I say all-encompassing, we are pulling in all of the employees to understand that they are also layers of security for us, and then offering training for them. Now, given the current situation where we have the high work from home environment, And when you have that kind of environment, you want to make sure that you also teach the employees how to be safe in their personal lives. We all know people use the same passwords. We tell them not to, but they will. You run out of ideas on passwords. However, if you teach them how to protect themselves at home, you're also teaching them how to protect themselves in the office. So when I say a layered, all-encompassing approach, we stop at nothing. We also add in physical security, right? So you have the physical security, information security, cybersecurity, all working together, and all having very layered approaches.
Yeah, excellent. So, and you're saying that, I'm laughing because about 2 years ago, just to give you this example about your passwords, when I initially started trying to look carefully at information security as well as the cybersecurity, my concentration was cybersecurity. Well, some guy in a hoodie and flip flops is in his basement, and all he does every day is hack. And that was my whole concentration. And I met with some security professionals, and they were giving me this story about having met a CEO, and they were going through both cyber and information security, discussing passwords. And they asked him, so where do you keep your passwords? And he looked at them kind of funny. And the security professional said, I'll bet you that if I go to your office and I open one of the drawers, your passwords will probably be written on a Post-it note. And he looked in his eyes, and what was interesting is, as big as his eyes got, the bigger my eyes got, because I thought, oh my gosh, I have Post-it notes on my desk with passwords so I don't forget them. And so, the ease with which information security can be breached, you're doing someone a favor. A disgruntled employee very easily would come in and be able to take the chief executive's passwords and have access to all the systems if you're not aware of that very simple human interaction. So, sure. And I'm learning as I go on the security business. Thank you, Tellis. But one of the things that I'm trying to emphasize, however, is, how are we different? So, the Dream Exchange is doing some things. So, and maybe you can address this, kind of what is it that we're doing, because it's not just a secure, supermarket. It's a stock exchange. So not only in the technology aspects, but in, like you addressed, like what are we doing as an exchange, perhaps to address all the layered aspects, and maybe you can speak to what we're doing in particular.
Sure. First, let me say that I think I touched on this earlier with the employees. Let's start with training our employees to carry on an aspect and understand that they are part of the security program themselves. Is one thing for certainly something that helps to protect us. With regard to the exchange, with regard to getting our project there faster, we're actually combining our teams so that we have representatives from the security teams, from the development teams, as well as from operations, all working together in teams to build various aspects of the business. So that as we're building their entire program, the company is really working as one big engine where we're all working off of each other's spokes. And that is just a fantastic approach. I think it will get us to market faster with various products. It allows us to be much more agile as we move through the marketplace. Excellent.
So, and I also note, I mean, maybe, I don't know if this is a good time or later, we do have a partnership with an outside firm.
Yes.
Defend Edge Scion. I mean, I don't know if you want to address that now or later.
I certainly can. Defend Edge is one of our very important layers of security. We will be an environment that have certain challenges to that environment. The acquisition of staffing is also very difficult. Again, we were at a negative 15% unemployment rate prior to the pandemic. We are much worse off now. I really don't want to see what that figure is at this point, just out of dread. So to bring in an experienced security organization like Defend Edge was just paramount to getting us launched, so that we have eyes always on the wheel, that we always have various layers of approach of security that they are able to add in along with our layers, so that we're constantly eyeing, constantly moving, constantly analyzing, constantly reviewing where we are, what we're doing, how to make it more secure. So
Yeah,
DefendEdge is a wonderful partner for us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed with even now we haven't launched, but their team was alerting us at 10 p.m. of a potential threat. We could go even in being able to access what we're constructing at this point. So that vigilance, the importance of that to me, and maybe the audience doesn't really understand this, but I am, when he's saying vigilance, it's literally a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week monitoring process that we're working with an outside provider, but we're building from the inside as well as another layer to make sure that this is financial data being carried by potentially the broad retail investing public, but also by our customers. So when we look at our customers, and most of our customers will be brokerages, they're going to want to know that we don't become the back door to their systems in some particular way, and that we're looking at that 24 hours a day. Sorry, one other. Sorry, I didn't want to go to participate just yet. One other aspect that I feel is just of paramount importance, especially in terms of the training. I think that there's an aspect to the training which, like I was explaining in the brief seminar I was in, there's an awareness of security and an awareness of what needs to be done that I think precedes the necessity level to do it. If there's a fire in a room, before you see the flames, it's very likely you'll smell the smoke. And instilling that awareness so that the tools that we're building are utilized. So as Tellis was explaining, you can have the best biometrics in the world to get in your building, but if your employees say, "Oh, come on in," to an unauthorized person, and they get into an unauthorized area, the biometrics have been bypassed without anyone really addressing what's, you spend all the money and we're not addressing the human element of this. And one of the key statistics, and I don't know, Tellis, you can correct me on this, but I think it's a very high percentage of security breaches that originate merely out of human failure, like the awareness wasn't there. And I'm emphasizing it just because I brought you on today to make sure that I want to create a series. This is in our series of webinars where, we get questions, how are you handling security? And then it could take an entire, 30, 40 minutes of discussion that would be, important to everybody. So, in that way, isn't there some, and I don't want to misquote it and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's some very high percentage of security breaches that are human originated, correct?
Absolutely, Joe. 82% of all breaches have occurred by way of internal employees.
Okay, I was thinking more.
Now, that's not to say that the internal employees are malicious necessarily. Many times it's because of poor awareness, poor security awareness, and that's why it's so important for us to have a viral security awareness program that is certainly out there training them. And when I say training employees, I do mean our security awareness program and then all the additives to that awareness program, so that they're not just aware, but they can actually be somewhat proactive, since we're doing so much work from home. But you're right, it comes from employees. In fact, I'll give you another. This is why HR is so important. It is much easier for a bad guy to approach the guy that works in your mailroom, who makes $45,000 a year, and give this guy $30,000 cash. It's much more economically feasible for him to even do it this way. For that guy to just, I'm going to send you an email, and when that guy sends him an email, click the link. It'll look like an accident. It's much easier to do that than it is to invest in and constantly and daily and trying to hack into a system. You've now just given this guy access. So again, we go back to that all-encompassing layered approach. In a layered system, even if that happens, you want to catch that before anything can be extricated out of your system. So that is part and one of the layers that we would actually have in place just to ensure that something like that can happen. This is a risk-averse system that we're building. We're gauging the credit. That's another very important thing that I love about what we're able to do here. That Bruce has certainly really locked in with me on, is that we are taking an approach where we're actually analyzing what our true risks are, so that as we make investments into our systems and make investments into security, we're understanding where we're spending our money and we're spending it as efficiently as possible. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that that's important. That's an important piece of information that, as we go through our, publicly letting people know what we're doing. There have been recent ransomwares in industries. There's the famous one, the oil industry was just, held at ransom. I'm acutely aware of some of the retailers in the area. I have friends in the retail business, so there's been a lot of retail, identity theft and theft of databases. And what I think, what has not occurred, and I'm not inviting this because we're building our trenches and our sandbags to be secure, but I can't imagine that if someone were to effectively be able to shut down the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ using a security breach, how devastating that could potentially be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the importance of the topic to us, and to emphasize this to those viewing this, is that we don't want to be that guy. We don't want to be the exchange that. And interestingly enough, I would suggest that even a single exchange today, because of the interrelationship of the technology, is a very important technology point. I probably should have covered this with Bruce Trask, but as we are in construction, what everyone should know about that capital market, how do those trillions of dollars change hands every day? Well, the fact is that there is something called the National Best Bid, Best Offer system. And within that system, under a rule, the rule is it's fashioned by the Securities Exchange Commission. It's called Regulation NMS. That stands for National Market System. Every stock exchange is obligated by rule to interact with every other stock exchange. So the traffic that comes to the Dream Exchange, it will be carried within a wider system that interacts with the national system, and through that national system, every other licensed stock exchange. Now, there are 7 organizations today that own licenses to conduct the business of a stock exchange. There are numerous other licenses beneath that, but it's really 7 organizations. We intend to be the 8th. And as part of that, all 7 of those organizations, they're providers of security information. They have the potential as well to be held ransom, if you will. And the market system itself, the entire system, has the potential. For example, if they shut down the New York Stock Exchange, it would be hard to imagine that any other exchange would be allowed to function by virtue of the fact that those who were at a disadvantage in their buying and selling through their New York Stock Exchange relationship would allow for an equal advantage to the other exchanges. So the fact is that thinking through these types of problems that don't yet exist, and being anticipating and having a certain amount of preemptive actions it's so important to the fabric of what we're doing, that even before we have connected to anyone else, we're trying to layer that in. And without what Tellis is explaining, both from the simplicity of training people not to write their passwords on a Post-it note, All the way to properly using the biometric security that will be an integral part of our facilities. In addition to cooperating with and making sure we have good industry partners like DefendEdge that can operate an entire security operations center that monitors you 24/7. All of those features that we're working on are intended to protect not only the Dream Exchange, but the financial industry, because I think that once the reputation of being secure and trusted is solidly in place, and I think we're actually ahead of the other organizations right now for two reasons. One is we do have the luxury of building in security as we construct the exchange, which I don't think anyone has had the same, and not because we're necessarily smarter, but in addition, we have the advantage of the more recent knowledge that these types of breaches have occurred. So we definitely are at a tremendous advantage in our exchange architecture and construction, and in our awareness of potential smoke. We don't have any smoke, but of the potential for smoke to go and ferret out any fires. I'm making some statements. I don't know if you want to color that in any way, Tellis, but I think that it is of great importance across all the layers we're describing, and it's particular to stock exchanges and financial services, perhaps more than other industries.
You're absolutely correct. The financial sector, particularly when you talk about the exchanges, they are so vital to the economy of the U.S. It would be the worst nightmare you can imagine if one of us, and forbid it be more than one of us, God forbid that would occur, but if one of us were to be shut down for a day as a result of some cybersecurity attack. And let's add in the other aspect that you now have nation states and nation state sponsored organizations that are also trying to attack. The financial market is where they want to hit and attack. Why? Countries like China, the former Soviet Union, Russia, they don't want to destroy the U.S. economy. They simply want to knock us back a few pegs so that they can take a more leadership role. How do you do that? Well, the quickest way to do that is to attack our financial markets. So you're talking about the highest of value targets outside of the military targets. So it is imperative that we absolutely build our system with an approach that we can't lose. We can't afford a day of loss. And so all of that is in the mindset of our operations, is built into our programs. And it's a challenge, but we'll face that challenge every day.
I didn't even think of that, but even yesterday, I believe there was the public announcement that there were 4 Chinese nationals indicted by the Department of Justice, and it's an interesting read because there's a lot of politicizing of the various what nation should we be cooperating with, and the political effects of that. This was a story I read on CNN, and the public announcements were coming from the current administration, which I think is a very telling point, because there's some politicization of the friendly neighbors and friendly nations, and the indictments that were handed down were, in fact, 4 Chinese nationals that were identified as working on behalf of the Chinese government. So the nation state aspect of this, and I'm emphasizing this just for our audience to understand that the task, while quite large, it's almost a monumental task. It's actually quite easily addressed if you're paying attention, if you're from the outset doing what we're doing. And it's not something that we've given short shrift to, or kind of glibly said, oh yeah, by the way, we need some security. literally every aspect every day. I think for many months now that I have Tellis, it has moved down my daily battle plan because I have someone there. But it has been at the top of the daily battle plan of exchange construction from the outset. We just really believe that whatever we spend our money on and invest our money in, we will get more of. I think that's a phenomenon. When you if you invest a lot of money in churches, you'll get more churches. If we invest a lot of money in very good technology and very good products that will help us all to survive, we will get more survival. And those products and services, they come from everywhere, especially what I consider to be almost a mission of my own personal undertaking, because I work with so many amazing Black entrepreneurs and I've had a difficult time getting them to market. And it's not for lack of imagination. It's not for lack of technical competence. It's not for lack of ideas. And I don't really care about the social arguments that may or may not be made. I just know that when we get those ideas into the marketplace, we will all be better off. And I'm dedicated to that in the Dream Exchange purposes. So thank you again very much. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. I hope you're healthy. I hope all of what went on with the recent rounds of illness don't have an impact on your life at all. And I hope you're flourishing and prospering. And I would invite you to join us. We are a prospering group. We are flourishing. Join us, flourish and prosper alongside us, or flourish and prosper and join our group in some other way. And I look forward to the next webinar. And I want to thank Tellis for breaking away from his day to come and join us today. And I look forward to seeing all of you again very, very soon, and to our changing of the world to make it a better place mission being accomplished. So thanks, folks. And we will see you all again very soon. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.